Come on, people. They're up here. Bro, that shit does not work on me. Please, Power Lash, man. It's like fucking Warden hits so damn hard, man. DK Dunk Squad. I guess he knew what I was thinking. Welcome back, everybody. Coming back with another video, talking a little bit about MagDK. MagDK's had numerous changes, especially lately, between things like combustion, the changes to MagDK with combustion. They've had cost increases. So I guess for a lot of people have had a hard time trying to figure out, what to run. I've run a couple of different setups that I kind of would recommend. Reviewing the one that I've been running kind of lately, and I kind of switched out one set that I kind of like a little bit more. I will say, first off, combustion sucks. It doesn't really give you much sustain. Even if you utilize like a destro staff that's charged, you still are not going to get anything out of the combustion passive. It's RNG. It's really crappy, and hopefully they'll do something with it. We've had cost increases to things like fossilize. There's cost increase to things like engulfing. Cost increase for burning embers, and of course, like I said before, to a lot of the AOE's. There's a lot of cost increase. And of course they fixed the passive in Searing Flame. Searing Flame, I guess for a while now, was also affecting whip. So we lost, because it was bugged, we basically lost 10%. Once Dragonhold went live, you lost 10% on your whip. And of course, by comparison, Magicka DK's damage is... It's either you kind of get damage and sustain and no tankiness. It's like, it's one of those classes where you can't have it all in comparison to like Sork, where you can be tanky with crazy burst and a lot of regen. So this is basically my recommendation for Magicka DK, and I'll go over the CP. So I did switch over to Breton. It was primarily for the cost reduction. You get a little bit of regen, but it was primarily for the cost reduction. Magicka DK skills are very expensive. And so I had been playing a Dark Elf for the better part of 5 years, and reluctantly kind of switched over to Breton just because I was having difficulty sustaining on multiple setups while still trying to maintain some sort of damage. So I was like, you know what? Let me just bite the bullet. And I'll switch over to Breton. With that said, kind of going to go over the build right here. So like I did say, this is my Magicka DK. I am now a Breton. Running the Apprentice. This is in Cyrodiil, all points into Magicka. For the sets that I'm running, I am still running Slimecraw. I did enjoy running, playing Vampire, but there's a lot of Scoria procs. There's a lot of, especially for next patch, there's going to be a lot of Zon procs going on. So it was something that I eventually just ended up dropping Vampire. This is a little bit old school. I did go back to Bloodthorn for, it is kind of a damage set. The 2, 3, and 4 piece gives you a lot of damage, a little bit of recovery, and then the 5 piece gives you a lot of Magicka and stamina recovery, which will get procced on direct damage like Flames of Oblivion, Talons, Engulfing, Whip, etc. Or even if you just light attack. So I wanted the extra sustain. Because on a DK you want to over sustain. You're basically trying to whittle people down. You want to out sustain your opponents. So you can see this is with the CP. I will go over the CP, and I still am utilizing Burning Spell Weave. I tried running New Moon on a DK, especially with all the cost increases, is very unsustainable. Um, at least, especially for no CP, it's very difficult to sustain. And I typically run a very low regen on Magicka DK. I'm usually like around 700. So as you can see here with CP, I'm at 1100. So that's quite a bit of recovery for me. I normally don't run that much, but I feel that it's definitely worth it. And like I said, so burning spellweave is on the back bar, right? So you can go infused or charged. It's up to you. And infused on the back bar is only going to give you an additional 50 spell damage. So you can kind of run a defending. It's basically whatever. You can run an ice staff if you have a burning spellweave ice staff. I have a sword and shield setup, so that's what I run. I like dual sword and shield, which means that for the front bar I went with willpower for the extra max magicka, the shot glyph to proc minor vulnerability, and then of course the weapon glyph on the back bar. I am running all spell damage, right? Tri-stat glyph on all the large pieces, and I did run one magicka here and one magicka here, and then I ran 2 health. If you feel comfortable running less, it's up to you. I felt in CP, especially when you're fighting multiple opponents, like the extra magicka is not really all. I mean, you can push 41k, it's entirely up to you. I felt having a little bit more health in light armor, because we don't have a lot of physical resistance, and most of our mitigation is going to come from blocking. So like I said, we are running Slime Crawl, which gives you crit, and of course it also gives you minor Berserk, which DK does not have access to. And for the food, I'm running Bewitched. And then a Magic Glyph Sturdy, and then another Sturdy piece, and then everything else is basically Impen. In terms of the skills, I am running degen on the front bar, and you can take a look at the tooltip on my degeneration. This is in CP, right? So we're 26k, almost 41k magicka, just shy of 17k. This is our recovery with a pot, and this is with the light attack on the back bar and the burning spell weave proc, just shy of 4k, 42% critical, 78% critical spell damage with 68% spell critical healing. These are our resistances. And then you can see the effective spell power on this build is 12,250. Spell pen is 6868. So in terms of basically how hard this build hits, it's probably one of the harder hitting builds that you're going to be able to run. You just have to get used to basically perma blocking, because you're in light armor, you don't exactly have a lot of physical resistance, so you're going to want to make sure that, which is why I decided to go this route with Bloodthorn, because I do block a lot, because the damage is very high. A lot of stamina builds are running New Moon and Fury, and like the average stam build is running around with like 5k. It's like the new minimum, which previous patches was like 4k was like your minimum. Now it seems like everybody is running around between like 5 and 7k. So I typically like to, especially in light armor, I permablock. I recommend all Magicka DKs to run a sword and shield, especially if you're utilizing light armor for the pen and for the extra critical, because it's not worth running a Destro and literally get blown up by a Shulk and a DB and then an Execute. So it's my recommendation. And of course, if you feel you're taking a little bit of too much damage, this is basically like your flex spot. So you could run like 2 potentates if you wanted like the extra mitigation. If you wanted a little bit more recovery, you could run any 2-piece that'll give you recovery, or you can utilize willpower to maximize your max magicka, which is the way that I rent, because I think I have more than enough, and I can typically sustain very well against multiple opponents. So we're running degeneration. You can see the tooltips right there is 22, almost 22.6, which is better than running. I'm not running embers. I'm almost like not interested in running engulfing, but it's still fairly good. You can see the tooltip on my whip. The tooltip is in CP is almost 13,000 on the whip. Our coag is coming in at almost 10.7. I'm running shattering. I don't run fossilize, primarily because when the person roll dodges out of the fossilize, they then gain immunity to roots for the next couple of seconds. And so it's a much easier way to, especially if you're fighting like other Magicka builds, like Nightblades or Sorks or Templars, Wardens, etc. It's much easier to and on top of that, most people end up dodge rolling the Power Lash, so that's why I don't run Fossilized. I haven't run Fossilized for quite some time. Plus, it gives you access, as you can see right there, that when the person attacks you, their next attack within 4 seconds, it basically heals you. Inner Light for the extra crit and the extra max Magicka does give you a little bit more to your Magicka recovery. And then you can see the big boy damage right there to the Ferocious Leap coming in at just shy of 24k. In terms of our engulfing, the upfront damage is almost 9,900, and then the damage over time is coming in at 16k. I am using Race Against Time. This is kind of also a flex spot. So either you can use Race Against Time if you find that you're having a difficult time fighting against other like ranged builds, then go over to Protective Plate. You'll still gain the immunity. You just won't have the movement speed or the minor force. The minor force, in terms of effective power, is not that much. It's maybe like 200 spell damage, the equivalent of about 200 spell damage. You can see it right here, right? We're at 12,252. And so if I were to remove the minor force, that brings us to, it's like 3 and change, right? 252, actually, no, it's like 400. So it's not really all that much for the 50% mitigation from range for 6 seconds. So it's entirely up to you as you play. You can use either one. If you like the mobility, then go with Race Against Time. And for the but either way, you'll gain the immunity. So if you need the extra damage mitigation, go with Protective Plate. If you want a little bit of mobility and a little bit of excuse me, a little bit of extra damage, go with Race Against Time. So if you look at the tooltip on Burning Embers cost just shy of 2,500. You can see the tooltip right there. The primary problem is that they changed it. Originally it was 10 seconds. Then it became 12 seconds. Now it's 14 seconds. And it's primarily because of PvE. So to give Magicka DKs in PvE like a little bit more sustained, because they're not spamming dots. Like if you're running Molten, then you're spamming dots nonstop because you're spamming your engulfing, you're spamming Embers, you're spamming Flames of Oblivion, just so that you can get the 1 proc of Molten. I don't want to play that little mini game, and I prefer the heal for Power Lash. You can see the heal from Power Lash is 18,600, and the Power Lash is 15,000. So that's kind of why I don't run. That's kind of why I don't run that. The Burning Talons, which I do recommend running. As you can see the tooltip right there, the upfront damage is 9,800, and it has a 10k dot with a 15k synergy. So especially if you're running in a group like in Battlegrounds, or if you're running with someone in open world, like they pop that synergy, it's basically good night. On back bar, I am running Flames of Oblivion. Flames of Oblivion is coming in at 10,000 damage. And of course Volatile Armor, and you can see the dot from Volatile Armor is 15, almost 15.5. And then you've got, if you have a little bit more ultimate, then you could always utilize Shooting Star, and it'll give you back a little bit of ultimate for each person hit, and it basically hits just as hard as Leap, but it gives you access to a little ground dot. So it's entirely up to you. You can put the Sigic Order on the back bar if you wanted an additional reduction. It's entirely up to you. I went with this way so I have a little bit of extra max Magicka on the back bar, and if I have, and for more expensive alt, so that I gain more out of Battle Roar. In terms of the CP, which I did do on live, right? So in terms of the CP on live, you can take a look at it here. A little bit into bashing, 34 into sprinter because we are using Race Against Time. I went quite a bit into siphoner so that I could reduce other people's recovery with every light attack. Just you want to make sure that you're weaving that light attack at least every 3 seconds so that the siphoner debuff stays up. It's 10% reduction to all of the recoveries. And then I just went a little bit into health recovery because I am using the Bewitched Sugar. and then a little bit into magic recovery. I really don't need that much magic recovery on MagDK, because between a pot and between you know, the cost reduction from running Breton, it's more than enough. The vast majority of my points went into block reduction, and of course the situational roll dodge. And of course, because I am running a sword and shield, so that should be obvious, putting a good amount of points into Shadow Ward. And then of course enough points into Warlord to CC break, etc. And a little bit, and the remaining points is just into bash, because I do light attack, whip, bash as long as I'm full stamina. In terms of the damage, I did go 19 into blessed. A lot of my points went into Elfborn, because I do have a good amount of critical, and since I'm running Race Against Time for the extra critical damage, it's kind of why I went this route, so that when you do crit, you're going to crit very hard. And then 49 points into Elemental Expert, and then a little bit into Spell Erosion. 21 points into Spell Erosion. Most of the damage is going to be damage, is direct damage between Whip, the upfront hit from both Engulfing, and as well as Talons, as well as Flames of Oblivion. So giving an extra 20% is why I went this route. And then of course 75 for the Exploiter, passive, and of course to increase the dots for both Degeneration and Engulfing, as well as the dot from Talons. Right, that's the dot from Talons is huge, and it's why I prefer it over running Embers, because Embers is over 14 seconds, but the dot from Talons is over 4 seconds. So it's a 10,000 dot over 4 seconds versus a 21,000 dot over 14 seconds. So that's why I do recommend running it. Plus, it also helps you when you're fighting multiple opponents. It does give you that little bit of pressure relief when you're fighting multiple opponents, so that you can Talons everybody and kind of reposition yourself, and then hit them again with an Engulfing, proc your Burning Spellweave, and then set up for a leap. As most of the time what will happen is when you Talons multiple opponents, especially if they're stamina builds, they're more than likely going to dodge roll, which is how you set up for big damage for your leap, because when they're in the middle of a dodge roll, they can't block to mitigate the leap. And that's kind of why I enjoy using it. Plus, if you're in a group, you have access to the synergy. Does a lot of good damage. And so in terms of cost, you can see Burning Embers is just shy of 2,500, and Talons is 33, so it's roughly about 800 more, but it can hit multiple opponents. And even though you can heal off of this, between the number of Templars and as well as Wardens have access to cleanse, Templars have access to cleanse. If you hit a Nightblade and he cloaks, it reduces the amount of damage that they take, and the damage that the amount of damage correlates to how much you heal, because you heal for a percentage of the damage. So if it gets cleansed, if the person cloaks, you end up doing no damage, as well as not getting a heal. So you're more likely to get the full amount of damage from Talons than you ever are from Burning Embers, which is why I stopped running Burning Embers. In terms of the rest of the points, I went 56 into Ironclad, 56 into Critical Resistance, and then I went 23 into each of these, and then most of my points went into Thick Skin, because most of your mitigation is going to come from blocking. So I went in quite a bit more into Thick Skinned, so that I could maximize the amount of damage reduction. I think I did this right. Looks okay. I think I needed one more point in here to get 16%. I'll fix that. And then of course a little 20% into Elemental Defenders, 35 points into Elemental Defender, and then the remaining points into Quick Recovery. And I think that's basically it. And I typically, like I said, use tripods. And then of course, you know, for your food buff, I do use Bewitched Sugar, and that gives you a little bit of extra health recovery. Fully buffed, you're going to have an additional it would be like 1100 health recovery with a pot. And so we're just basically looking back at the setup. You can see it right here, right? 26k health, just shy of 41k Magicka, and what is that, 1675 stam, and then this is the recoveries with a pot. This is, like I said, this is just shy of 4k spell damage. Got a good amount to spell crit, and this is basically what I've run 2 different variations of this build, and it works out really well. I have a lot of sustain. I'm not really running dry on especially when I'm fighting multiple opponents. So this is basically what I'm running for this patch. Who knows what's going to happen with off balance and power lash, and that's basically why I'm basically playing Magicka DK as much as I can until the next pack drops, and then who the hell knows what's going to happen. Feel free to if you have any questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section, and of course, if you enjoy the content, be sure to subscribe and of course like the video so that it gets recommended to other people. Thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.